struggling today. Struggling. Two, hello, check. How's it going, folks? Hello. Are you there, chat? You with me? Are you there? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Sound off. Sound off in the chat. Yell into your phones. Hey chat, I wrote you, but you still ain't calling. Just eating some good old apple and cheese here. I need to eat something too, but I don't know what yet. Pixel Tonic, what do we got? What are the options? What are the options? Beans and rice or ramen? Okay. What do we think, chat? What do we think? Obviously, you know I'm a ramen guy, but honestly, some nice beans and rice sounds nice right now. I think beans and rice gets my vote. If that counts for anything. To think outside the box and combine ramen with beef. That I'm not so sure about. I don't know if I endorse that. Okay. Okay. Apple eat. There was a place on this huge fucking desk where I could put my plate. Fortunately, there. Chin chin. Rob, did you cause Adam Sessler to delete his entire account? Okay, first of all, first question. Who the fuck is Adam Sessler? Why do people insist on introducing me to these people? I have no idea who this is. I just see some like dipshit spouting off and saying all kinds of, ridiculous stuff. But no, it wasn't me. I think it was everyone pushing back on that. I think Drill as well quote tweeted the guy. What a pathetic dude. What a pathetic guy though. Like I don't even have the screenshots or anything of it. But like he comes out and says like all these protesting kids are basically Trump supporters. I think the police should just beat the shit out of them. I don't care. And then everyone gets mad at him, justifiably. And then he's trying to pull this thing. Oh, no one's reading what I actually wrote. No one's reading what I actually wrote. No one's reading what I actually wrote. It's okay to protest Israel, but this stuff has gone too far, and this has happened. And I think he called JVP like Uncle Toms that just give cover to anti-Semites. No one's reading what I wrote. It's like, no, we read what you wrote. Like, everyone read very clearly what you said. Everyone read very clearly when you were like, these protesters are I'm a liberal, apparently. Like, this is like the liberal opinion. These protesters are just like Trump supporters, so the cops should just beat them up. That's how they justify anything now. All of their like obsession with like free speech or like whatever, supporting social movements, social justice, whatever it is. They're basically just Trump supporters. Beat the shit out of them. I don't care. Send in the cops. Send in the National Guard. Like, that's what he said. And then he pulls this bullshit. No one's Gamergators and leftists and tankies and they're all the same. I'm out of here. And he quits Twitter and deletes his account. Because he said, like, with his name, like with his official legal name written on it, and he says, these people are just Trump supporters. The cops and the National Guard should just go in and beat them up. And everyone is like, how about fuck you? And then he has this big self-righteous little temper tantrum and leaves Twitter permanently. I never watched any of this like G4 video game review stuff. I don't know who these people are. I have no fucking idea who this is. He retreated to Blue Sky and we bullied him off there. I don't really use Blue Sky anymore, but I should have just logged in just for that. Yeah, no, it wasn't me, but I think like it was a lot of people. A lot of people. No, I just tweeted something about the Sarah Jama thing. I always mispronounce her name. I saw that. What can we even say about Sarah Jama? Literally one of the only public figures in this country. I just tweeted this, but literally one of the only public figures in this country that has actual like convictions and courage and will actually put their principles over these like bullshit political games. So naturally she gets attacked as being like a radical and a terrorist. and Reddit, it's Sarah Jama, who's a member of provincial parliament in Ontario, who was censored and kicked out of her own caucus because on like October 10th she released a statement that wasn't just bullshit like Israel has a right to defend itself, denounce Hamas, whatever was the memo went around for people had to fall in line, and she refused to fall in line. And she's still doing it now. So, cool person and someone that I'm proud to know a little bit. You know, it was really cool getting to talk with her on this show, and you know, she's great. At least someone in this country is. You know, like I said at the time, it's like it's one thing when it's easy. When it's easy to like criticize Israel, to stand up for Palestine. It's entirely different in moments like the few weeks following October 7th, and gained a huge amount of respect for people in the political world, in the media world, or wherever else that didn't fall into this trap in those days, like pulling this like both sides thing. Remember that by October 10th, the death toll in Gaza was already at 1,000 people. Yeah, Joe, and anyone that has any passing familiarity with this knew exactly where it was going. Because we're not fucking idiots with goldfish brains. Knew exactly what was happening. Up the Reds, how's it going? Yeah, but that's the thing. There's so many of these people, like Adam Sessler. And then he has this whole thing like, yeah, this trying to have this nuance. Oh, people don't want to read what I actually wrote. That was such a cop-out. I just learned who this fucking guy was. I learned of his existence, and he was immediately bullied off Twitter, and I hope he never returns. You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
More Dakadoon. DRRRRR. Jamie. Join.
Joe, thank you very much for the 8 months. Hey, Old Dutch, how's it going? I got my Kibono stuff. I was wearing my hoodie yesterday. I got my shirt. I didn't do it today. Really, really cool shirt. It was, how the fuck has it only been 8? I feel like I've spent a lifetime here. That's how you know it's working. That's how you know it's working. Bullied him off Twitter 4 times before this. Wouldn't be surprised if it happened again after. Oh, so he's pulled this before. So yesterday we had a long chit chat about a bunch of mostly silly stuff. There's a lot of talk about celebrity ski accidents. I vaping illness pilled a number of community members, chatters. But we kind of steered away from the discourse and the news and everything like that. We got to dive right back into it today because there's plenty to talk about. I feel weird wearing stuff I've designed, but this one I want to get. You shouldn't feel weird. No? I don't feel weird wearing my own merch. I didn't design it, but I did design my buttons, my 49th pair hold. I designed this. I wear that. I don't feel weird at all. I wear my own merch all the time. Jesus Christ. Like, okay. Like, side note here, it's honestly crazy to me that, like, Elon Musk buys Twitter and his whole thing is like, we have to have Twitter blue and we have to have people pay for it to get rid of the bots. His whole thing, the bots, we're going to get rid of the bots, you know? And there's this whole thing of apparently this out of control rampant child porn problem, which I didn't realize was an issue. That's not something I had ever seen ever on Twitter. Apparently, according to Elon Musk and some of his fucking fanboys, it's this like rampant problem. And yet now, on this platform, which is used by young people, not only are there bots, but there's bots posting like full frontal explicit nudity in the replies to like random tweets about like politics. Like I just tweeted about Sarah Jama and there's a fucking bot under it with like a explicit pornographic image. Like that was not happening prior to Elon Musk taking over Twitter. You know? I didn't have like bots posting like sexually explicit pornography in the replies to my tweets prior to Elon Musk taking over this website. I see a lot of boobs in bio on your tweet threads. This is not that though. This is a bot with an image that says link in bio on the image. I'm looking at it now. I can't show it on the screen because it's literally hardcore pornography. Like, Jesus Christ. I saw someone say Twitter is the most fascist social media site now. I don't know about that, but the moderation is completely non-existent. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, I don't think it's gotten better, definitely. But like, there was always this undercurrent of like this strong reactionary undercurrent on Twitter. That was the whole thing with Jack and the Twitter leadership prior to that. Like, ban the Nazis, and didn't want to do it. So not that much has changed in that respect. And also, there's plenty of that kind of stuff on Facebook, plenty of that kind of stuff on YouTube, you know. It's definitely gone down the road of libertarian, unregulated hellscape, though. I would agree with that, absolutely. Definitely on Facebook, I don't have people like, well, I don't use Facebook, but if I did, I don't believe that if I posted a Facebook status, there would be robots posting like hardcore pornography in the replies. I don't think that would be happening on Facebook. Anyway, I find it kind of strange because that's the exact opposite from what he kind of like sold himself as when he was buying the website. The whole thing was that was not going to happen anymore. You won't be getting any pro-liberation content on Facebook. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's some of that there, but no, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, that's why it's like I'm not on Blue Sky. Over the last 6 months, Twitter has still, with all its problems, with all its imperfections with Elon and everything, it's still been one of the best sources to like share information about Palestine and to counter this relentless pro-Israel narrative in our media. It's been like, besides TikTok, yes. But it really has been. It's almost like he's just full of bull poop. That's what I've been saying. Arguably the best remaining social media site, TikTok, is getting banned. Social media better die off in my life. Well, it depends on where you are. Are you in America, Joe? Like it and the thing is, it's not going to happen for whatever's going to happen with TikTok in America. Still is not going to happen for a little while because it's going to be tied up in the courts and they're appealing and they are trying to avoid it. So if it goes through, then it will be effectively banned in the United States. I don't know. I mean, I'm positive Canada will follow closely behind. But so far, like, that hasn't happened yet in Northern Ontario. Not happening here. Well, that's the thing. It's like it isn't happening here, but like you wouldn't be surprised if the United States State Department calls up Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre or whoever's in charge and says it's time to ban TikTok. They're going to say, yes, sir. And then that's what's going to happen. So I don't want to get too comfortable with that. Oh, yes, sir. Is there anything else we can do for you? That's what these people sound like to me. Something fitting with the U.S. government trying to get control of social media about 10 years too late for them to really control the narrative. I mean, this is all just factors in this kind of trend that we're seeing right now, that it just seems like they're losing control. And these are acts of desperation. Banning TikTok is an absolute act of desperation, right? That's just going to have this further radicalizing effect on this generation. Like, I think this generation is just gone. This generation is just lost now. This is kind of what I want to talk about today, overall. This is like the main subject that I want to talk about, unless there's any like more chit-chat that we want. They do control it to an extent. There's lots of backdoor control of the non-TikTok platforms. For sure, look at Facebook. There's all the kinds of crossover between the U.S. government and the security state and like the Facebook board. You know, Elon Musk's relationship with the U.S. government and the intelligence community as well. But yeah, it's the one that they don't have, like, there are people on the inside, basically. I guess we should just dive right into this. This is kind of what I wanted to spend today talking about. The boomers gave up because they were bribed with affordable real estate and pensions. The generation knows they aren't getting that. That's the thing. That's what we have that the boomers don't. That's why this generation won't become Reaganites. Unless there's some massive economic shift, which maybe someone in the ruling class will figure that out. Oh yeah, if we just like make people's lives less miserable, they're less likely to rebel. Maybe someone will start to figure this very simple equation out, you know, and things will change. But it doesn't. It seems like their brains have been too destroyed by greed to even understand this basic idea. We've talked about that a lot before, though, right? Like America and Bernie, the way they came together to block the Bernie movement, where it's like, if you just gave this generation Medicare for all and a few of these other like very minor economic reforms, he would probably kick the can down the road for the whole next generation, even as things overall continue to get worse, but they can't even figure this out. It's amazing. These people's brains should be studied. Like, the obvious answer for their continued domination of our entire society, their continued hegemony, is right in front of them, and they just won't take it. They're like, no carrot, only stick, only stick. Seriously, like, imagine they fixed healthcare in Canada and regulated grocery stores a little bit. Half the freedom convoy lefties would dissipate. Yeah, like, pumped more money into healthcare, restoring our sort of like what once used to be a like robust universal healthcare system. Regulated grocery stores. Got more involved in housing, making housing more affordable. Like, all the answers are there. Most of them are practically old enough to have been alive for the New Deal. Yeah, these are truly amazing people. Their own hubris, their own greed. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. It's their own hubris and greed that's bringing about their downfall. As an American, I love being double billed and surprise billed for my healthcare. I don't get all the haters out there. Yeah. No, that's fun. It's good to live like that. And it's really good as well when people, like, especially young people, are like, this is bullshit. I hate this. Please, can we change this? And all these millionaires, these millionaire lawyer landlords in the government are just like, you're lazy and entitled. That's what's happening here. You just want puppies and unicorns and rainbows and stuff like that. Like, that's what Hillary Clinton said. Oh, he's just offering puppies and unicorns and rainbows. Like, just being a condescending prick to the people that are just struggling and just begging for a little relief from the relentless, crushing onslaught. Just begging for a small amount of relief, and you're like, these whiny little kids. And meanwhile, they work about 3 months a year. Half of them are fucking drunk 50% of the day, 50% of the time. just fully corrupt. It's really just wild to me.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Thank you for the raid. How was the stream today? You're never streaming at this time. You're usually streaming at like weird hours of the night when I'm not awake. Hi, Swag Daddy. Hello, Gliz. Get used to that. That's what they call him. Swag Daddy Rob Russo. Ravishing. Exactly. Let's use the full title here. Okay. Yep, that's the command. Well, I don't know why it didn't work for you there, but as usual, I would suggest to wait till there's a sale. I'm trying to call as many people Swag Daddy as I can these days. Well, that does lessen some of the good feeling I got from it. I didn't realize I thought I was special. I thought I was special, Gliz. I thought I was the swag daddy now. Now I'm just... What, am I disposable to you? Oh, you just say that to everybody. No, I see how it is. There is a sale. Yeah, you're right, there is. Very nice. There's a sale for the next 15 hours, folks. So if you do want to get TRRS merch, or like the brand new Kibono shirt, you can do it. Really cool.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Joe, thank you for the gifted sub. Swag daddies like you are a dime a dozen. Man, I really love that. In fact, I still do love that Taking Back Sunday. Oh, your friend. Very good. It's definitely up there among the best of those kinds of albums came out around that. Anne Hathaway calls Rob swag daddy. I mean, I believe that's true, yeah. In fact, we don't know that Glizzarella isn't Anne Hathaway. Except that they just followed 2 minutes ago. I think Anne was already following, so it's probably not Anne Hathaway. But I do believe that Anne Hathaway is a stealth viewer of the show. You start looking for like hidden signals, like one of those schizo parasocial obsessed people. Start looking for Anne Hathaway interviews and looking for like secret codes and what she's saying and signals and stuff. She's signaling us. It'd be cool if Axl Rose watched me. Oh yeah. I agree. One of the most scintillating vocal performances in all of rock music. Appetite for Destruction. Came right out the gate. Scintillating. She blinked ROV in Morse code. Blurp blurp, thanks for the 420. Here we go.
Swag Daddy Rob, apex of the friendship triangle, Noodle Lord of the North, spiciest commentator, he of the stash.
Thank you very much for that. Vulgar of the North. Folks, look, we're breaking this one wide open. We're through the looking glass. Check this out. What's this shape? What are all these shapes behind Anne Hathaway? You seeing what I'm seeing here? She wants us to talk to her. She wants us to know. She can't. She can't because of like the rules, the Hollywood rules, or publicists. She can't come out and admit that she's a part of this community. She's a viewer of this show. It would be career suicide. She's letting us know through these subtle kind of messages. Saying yes, please keep watching footage of me in interviews, learning details about my life. Exactly, that's what she's telling us. Just to pretend to be waiting in line for Pete Davidson. It's all just a long con. All just a long con. We know. Say no more, Anne. Message received loud and clear. Okay? Merch question for those that have ordered different classic, premium, or heavyweight. We prefer heavyweight. This is a classic that I'm wearing right now, and I like the fit of these for what it's worth. Message received loud and clear, Anne. Before we move on, what else is there? I don't know. Watched a little bit of hoops last night. Wasn't quite as exciting. I really would love... I don't think it's going to happen. It was a big Heat victory. Big victory for Heat culture last night. I would really be so thrilled if the Heat could somehow, without Jimmy Butler as the 8th seed, beat the Celtics. Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't even want to imagine that it's a possibility, but that would be very fun. Learn from Jack Allison that rich people's shirts are super thin. Thinner the shirt, the more expensive. I can't confirm it either. I miss Jack Allison. I miss being able to turn on Twitch every day and see Jack Allison on. We're all praying on Austin's. Watched a little bit of the... I got really sleepy. I started dozing off around the third quarter. OKC. I don't know. SGA, I think he's the MVP. Obviously, you could make a case for Jokic to win yet another MVP. I'm in the give it to SGA camp at this point. Number 1 seed. Had an incredible year. And he's still so young. They're the 1 seed in the West. I think OKC, no one predicted that. 1 seed in the West. He's just so good. It was just completely dominant last night. So young, fully unfazed by the moment. Zero, wilting away from the spotlight. He's so good. I would love to see him eventually come to Toronto. I don't see why he would ever actually do that, but it would be nice. But I see no reason why he would ever leave right now. Got a good situation right there. And, all that's really left is that, I was woken up very early today. Where'd Jack go? I think he just stopped doing Twitch, and I think I know he just wrote a book. He wrote a book that seemed really cool. Yeah, I can't really blame him. I don't know though, you know what, Dakadoon, I don't love the trying to make money on Twitch aspect. I really do like doing this show. If I started having if some miracle happened and I started having more income from other stuff that I was doing, or I didn't really need to have Twitch as my main income, I would probably still do this show, I think. Not every single day, maybe, if I was had something else going on that had took priority over it, but I would probably still come in here and hang out at least a little bit. A sugar mama would solve that. That would actually solve a lot of things. That's true. That is true. I don't think I have a lot of sugar mama opportunities, though, unfortunately. I don't think I'm quite offering anything that any potential sugar mamas are really looking for. You know what I mean? They'd be like, what am I supporting you for? What are you doing? What are you doing for me? I don't know. You won't find a sugar mama with that attitude. No, I will not. No, I will not. Communist bloggers are a hot community in the sugar mama marketplace. No, that's the thing. You offer boyish charm. That's right. Yeah, I think so. Maybe some people are into that. I don't know. I got woken up very early today. That's the only other thing for me. Is like I am like a little disoriented. I've got a bit of a headache. I don't feel great today because I got woken up. So I got woken up at like 4 a.m. by my son. Woke me up at like 4 a.m. Still pitch black outside. He started talking to me at like 4 about, I want to say Alice in Wonderland. He started talking to me about something. I can't quite recall. And I was like, buddy, I can't talk to you about this right now. Like, it's the middle of the night. I cannot talk to you about this right now. Eventually, he just like went into his room and turned on the light and just read Calvin and Hobbes for like. And then he came in. It was the morning. He like was just like in his room reading Calvin and Hobbes until the sun came up. So I was able to get back asleep a little bit, like on and off, until like 6. I got up at 6. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I imagine at some point he's got to stop waking me up in the middle of the night, right? Like eventually he's going to not do that. Pretty sure. He's not going to be waking up in the middle of the night when he's like 12, is he? I don't think so. Surely he can't continue waking me up in the middle of the night, like, ever. Are you a morning person? Well, I don't think, like, naturally, Dave, like, before I had kids and when I was, like, you know, just kind of like a nomadic artist, I would go to bed at, like, probably 4 or 5, 6 in the morning and then sleep until 1 p.m. or so. That was my kind of, like, natural rhythm. I've been a morning person since having kids, though, because you just, by necessity, just kind of have to become one. But I don't love it, but I'm just used to waking up at that time. Usually I get up at around 7:30, my daily wake up. That's my daily wake up. The other day I slept until like 9 and I was like, oh my God, what is this? What is this? I was like amazed. Is the music bugging you, Diego? I think it might be a thing because I think I tried to fix my mic hiss problem, and I believe there shouldn't be any mic hiss. Right? I don't believe there's any mic hiss, but it might have affected the like volume that I was speaking at. Perfection. The music just kept repeating. That's kind of how it usually works, though, Diego. That's literally every day that happens. Man, I'm just never gonna stop having audio problems. Just never stops. Now it's too quiet. See? I just can't fucking win. I can't win. What are the NBA games? I believe it's Lakers Nuggets again tonight. Tonight's going to be good. We got Knicks Sixers 3, and we got Nuggets Lakers game 3 at 10. That's going to be good stuff. Audio problems of the boulder to streamers. Well, to me it's the sub goal. The sub goal is the Sisyphus boulder for me, Blueberry, and the audio issues are just like you're trying to roll the boulder uphill and there's people just like hucking rocks at you while you're trying to do it. I saw someone made the Sisyphus game. The audio issues of the vultures picking at you. Right. Absolutely. Okay, so that's everything going on with me, I think. We covered everything. Did you cover lunch? Not really. I just had some apples and cheese when I got started here. Did you play? Oh, wow. St. Lotus said, did you play Barbell yesterday? Huh. Did I play Barbell? What's that about? What's going on with that? A weird thing to say. Now you know how it feels. Now you know how it feels when you make a flub or a gaffe. People say mean and hurtful things to you. Okay, well let's get into talking about this. Let's get into it. No, I didn't, St. Lotus. In fact, I've been having some serious pain in. I feel my return to the court seems farther away than ever right now. I was also just parenting, so wasn't able to do that. Eventually, though. Eventually, I will. Anyway, we're going to take a look at some of the footage yesterday from campuses in at Columbia, elsewhere in New York, in Texas. There's a number of now Palestine solidarity movements and encampments that are happening right now. Of course, you had police going into this to Austin, heavily riot cops being called into these protests with all the free speech Republican governors, cheerleading it. And all the free speech crew cheering it on. Free speech on college campuses, they said they claimed about. Sometimes I wonder, let me know if I'm off base here. Sometimes I just really wonder whether these people actually believe in free speech or whether they just kind of use this as a cudgel to silence any dissent that they don't like. Sometimes I'm just not so sure. Sometimes I'm just not so sure. I can't quite put my finger on it. Sometimes what I think free speech means from these free speech guys is we should be able to say like slurs about trans people or black people or whatever it is. But also people shouldn't be able to, say, I don't support Israel. Or like they shouldn't be able to, protest, support Palestine. Sometimes I'm just not sure it's 100% genuine. I can't tell. It's just impossible to tell. If only there was a way to know. If only there was a way. Also spread misinformation about vaccines. That's right. I wonder if I should tweet about this here. I'm even tweeting that I'm live. Even tweeting that I'm live for once is a special little treat to everybody. Free speech means let me be a fascist, bigoted Nazi, and every other viewpoint should be silenced. Exactly, and that's why I have no interest in playing this game or being like, no, we should have free speech. Like, no, we shouldn't. We shouldn't have free speech. I think those people that you're describing should be silenced and suppressed. I think certain viewpoints should be silenced and suppressed. I have no problem admitting that. These cowardly people can't even admit that they don't believe in any of this shit. They have to use this kind of like mental gymnastics to pretend that they support something that they obviously do not believe in at all. I'll openly admit, no, I think certain viewpoints should be suppressed. I think we need to have a lot more suppression of viewpoints in our society, not less. I think we should have free speech for people that want to stand with, or support social justice, people that are against empire, people that are, protesting for Palestine. We should have those viewpoints should be allowed. And I think the viewpoints on the other side of that should be not allowed. What's the big problem? What's the big problem with that? And again, this is what these people believe, like all the free speech warriors. This is what they believe. They're just too cowardly to actually come out and say that. Let's just get this all out on the table here. Rob comes out against fascist newspapers. Exactly. Are they going to be able to keep their newspapers and their radio programs? No. We're going to take away their newspapers. We're going to take away their radio programs and their news programs and their blogs and their podcasts and their YouTube pages and their Twitch channels and their Twitter accounts and their TikTok accounts. And we're going to leave up the good ones. Not this like both sides. Well, if you censor some viewpoints, then you can
count on me.
You have to censor certain other ones as well.
To talk you through all this.
Just the ones.
So much for the tolerant left.
Amazing Bircha, thanks for the 34 months of Prime. Tucker too? Yeah, absolutely. Because like whatever people point to like things that Tucker might say, like whether it's about Israel or other like issues of empire, and they say that he's like based or whatever it is, there's many more people that can share that viewpoint in a way more interesting and articulate way while also not being a fucking Nazi in like the entire rest of their political viewpoints. You know, I saw this morning, the first thing I woke up, I saw this morning, I opened Twitter and saw Elon Musk quote tweeting Tucker Carlson with like a concerning, because Tucker Carlson did a piece on like systemic anti-white discrimination. Like whatever value you might think that a Tucker Carlson might have, you know, he's out there using that value or making those cases to bring people in and then fucking convincing them that they're victims of state-sponsored anti-white discrimination. First they came for the racist, fascist podcaster Nazis, and I said nothing because that was good. Yeah, and then our society was improved by that. And we all just went about our lives. Did you watch Tucker's interview with Montar Isaac? No, I did not. No. No, I did not. Anyway, we're going to look at some of this footage of what's been happening on college campuses just over the last like 24 hours. Like there's really like an escalation happening. And I don't know, like I don't want to get too ahead of myself, you know? It feels a little bit like when it comes to Israel and its relationship with especially young people, a kind of Rubicon has been crossed just over the last couple of days, like to say nothing of the last 6 months, but just over the last couple of days, like there's a real palpable shift happening. And I think you understand, like we watched that documentary film, The Lobby, the Al Jazeera documentary, The Lobby, about the Israel lobby and about how focused it is on university campuses. And every single time there's an uptick in Palestinian activism on university campuses, there's this moral panic about anti-Semitism on these campuses, these anti-Semitic campus groups and all this stuff, you know, when they're supporting like BDS or anything like that, or like that's what's been going on over the last several years. And I feel like there's a reason for that. And part of the reason is because like Israel and its supporters, they can't allow Israel to become the cause, you know, like South Africa eventually just became the cause, and like it just became this laser focus, and like these campaigns to boycott and divest, these anti-apartheid campaigners that like our ruling class. I think that like the South Africa analogy is really, really interesting to look at. There's so many similarities in it. And it really feels like this Rubicon has been passed now, where Israel is on its way to becoming the Rhodesia or the South Africa. Like I think they've just lost this generation, you know? And this has really been like spiraling over the last 6 months, but especially just over the last couple of weeks. It feels like this point of no return has been crossed. And everything that they're trying to do right now to put the toothpaste back in the tube is just making the problem worse for them. You know, calling in these fucking riot cops to these, or the NYPD or whoever, the National Guard, calling in like armed thugs to bust up these encampments, banning TikTok. They're looks like they're getting into like, they're passing bills basically in the dead of night, which is going to give the state in the United States the ability to like go after nonprofits that they deem as like terrorist supporting. So there's regulations being put in place to be able to target some of these groups, such as like, you know, Jewish Voice for Peace and these kinds of groups. But it just seems like it's just desperate. Like these are acts of desperation. And like I said, this is what the whole focus on campuses have been about over the last several decades, is not allowing this like to turn into the kind of cause that eventually South Africa and apartheid became for a whole generation of people. And look at what anti-apartheid campus activists were saying at the time. We can look at statements. I've got a saved statement from one of these anti-apartheid student groups. So similar. Look at the way that and Nelson Mandela himself, who became this hero to the West, was framed for years as being a terrorist. And like the ANC was like the Hamas of the time. And it was all the exact same rhetoric, all the exact same tactics. It's like, obviously it's never going to be a perfect one-to-one historical analogy, but it's really, really, really similar. And that's what's happening with Israel right now. Israel is just losing its legitimacy. And now there's this snowball that's going downhill and just picking up, growing and growing and growing and growing. And like they're flailing desperately to try and stop that. But it's like, I don't think it can be stopped now. And in fact, like the more they try to bust up these encampments, you know, the more it's going to lead to even more activism. It's become like self-fulfilling or self-reinforcing now. It's such a powder keg too. Like there's like a spark added to this current climate could like really create a almost unimaginable kind of situation. Yeah, and they're using the same tactics that previously failed. Like let's actually look at this. I have a saved statement here from a couple weeks ago about one of these anti-apartheid groups, and they're doing everything. You know, they're claiming that it's China and it's Russia that's doing this, right? Nancy Pelosi's, I have an interview with Nancy Pelosi saying it has like a Russian tinge to it. Like every single tactic, it's some foreign operation, which is hilarious because it's all being done on behalf of a foreign government. It's a foreign operation. They're supporting terrorism. Let me see if I can find this here. This is a look at this. This is really fascinating. This is a statement. This is a statement from Colombia's Students Against Apartheid in 1985. And like I'm starting to really believe that Israel is headed in the same direction. I was thinking the other day, like, when's going to be the first like Hollywood movie? Like you can see in Hollywood when there's this switch. And I remember there's this brief moment where like the South Africans became the bad guys and like Hollywood propaganda, like Lethal Weapon 2, diplomatic immunity, and these guys. You know? I'm just waiting for the moment where this is, and if we do see this switch, we're going to see something really amazing, which is that all these people in politics or the media or whoever are going to pretend that they were never supportive of this. If Israel ever gets cut loose by the West, which is still a long ways away because Israel is such an important cog for them in the Middle East. It's their attack dog in the Middle East. It kind of secures the dominance of the petrodollar. I mean, it's Israel serves a vital role for the U.S.-led empire. Joe Biden himself explicitly said that in the 80s. Anti-apartheid crusader Joe Biden said this. You know, if Israel did not exist, we would have to invent an Israel to protect our interests in the region. You know, he said it clear as day. He was absolutely correct for once in his fucking life about this. So I'm not going to say I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's going to be like easy or it's like, oh, it's finished or there's nothing going to, nothing can happen. Like this is the doomsday scenario. But you'll notice if it ever does get cut loose by the West, there will be this shift where all the people that have been supporting this for years and years and years are going to pretend that they were against it. They're going to pretend that they were against it all along. And again, the connection with Israel and South Africa is really fascinating too, considering Israel was one of South Africa's last remaining allies towards the end of apartheid. Why is that? Why is that exactly? Let's look at this statement. This is from Colombia's Students Against Apartheid in 1985. On April 4th, National Divestment Protest Day, 300 students marched from a protest rally to Hamilton Hall where chains were placed on the front doors and a 3-week blockade began for divestment of Colombia's $32.5 million in South Africa-related holdings. The protest began 10 days after 7 members of the Coalition for a Free South Africa started a hunger strike and 3 days after the university trustees had refused to even discuss the divestment issue. And it's amazing, too, because Colombia today acknowledges that these protesters were right and they were wrong for mass arresting these protesters. I'm sure glad Biden can stop these dangerous protests, but cannot stop the genocide being committed with my taxes. Well, incel for Engels. Apparently, Biden has no power to do anything. That's what people keep telling me. That's what people keep telling me. When you say, Biden, why doesn't Biden stop this? He has no power to stop Israel. He has no power over whether these states or cities are calling in the National Guard or the cops. Biden just has no power over anything. He can't do shit. But apparently it's really important you got to vote for him now. We really got to vote for this guy who has no power to ever do anything. He can't stop Israel from doing genocide. Can't stop these protests from being met with state repression and mass arrests. I did see his teleprompter snafu where he read his stage directions. That's one thing he can do. I also saw another one. I think it might have been from the same speech where he wandered off after, and they literally have a little toddler fence around him now. So when he wanders off, he can't go too far. It's actually really something else. He's a perfectly fitting leader for this dying empire. Anyway, for 21 days, the steps of the renamed Mandela Hall became the site for an unprecedented alliance of student, community, and labor groups, highlighted by a citywide march of 2,000 people to the Columbia campus in support of divestment. The protest sparked militant campus protests across the country and built momentum for the successful April Actions for Peace, Jobs, and Justice, which attracted 75,000 people to Washington, D.C. and 60,000 to San Francisco. The blockade paralleled the 1968 Columbia Revolt in that both underscored the undemocratic corporate structure of the university and its divorce from the student and community opinion. What distinguished the 85 blockade was the supportive mobilization of the major trade unions in New York City. These unions have been major backers of state and city divestment legislation, including a phased divestment plan affecting $665 million in NYC. In the course of their struggle, the Columbia students were backed by Bishop Desmond Tutu, the United Democratic Front, the ANC, a number of other organizations. Many local political and community leaders also gave their support. In order to escalate their struggle, the Columbia Coalition for a Free South Africa decided to move the blockade on April 25th to other sites of protest. That evening followed a dramatic rally in which the chains were cut from the doors of Mandela Hall. 1,000 people marched from Columbia University into the Harlem community to join an important community meeting at the Canaan Baptist Church. As the students streamed into the church, community residents sang chorus after chorus of Glory, Hallelujah. The first ever march from Columbia to Harlem underscored the students' commitment to combat racism at home and the potential for an alliance against Columbia's slumlord practices. The very next day, 55 students were arrested for blockading the Park Avenue office building where Columbia Trustee Board Chairman Samuel Higginbottom works. coalition continued the pressure with the protest at the May 6th meeting of the trustees on campus as a prelude to an action at the May 15th commencement exercises. This is 1985. And it's amazing because Columbia University today recognizes that these students were right. They recognize that they were right in 85. They recognize that they were right in 68. But apparently, though, they're wrong and dangerous and anti-Semitic and terrorist supporting now, though. That's the difference. You know what I mean? That's the difference. With the link, I'll send you the link right here. Just give it 20 years. Well, that's what I mean. Exactly similar to what we saw. It'll be the same thing. Like I said, they're going to always pretend that they were against all this. But it really, really feels right now that that is what is happening. That Israel has reached that kind of like status with an entire generation of people. You know, from basically millennial down. It's reached that status as this pariah state that now has become the kind of central political issue, which a lot of really smart and dedicated activists are very correctly linking to other domestic issues. You know? So it really feels like that's what's happening. And I'm not going to sit here and predict that Israel is just going to go away overnight. I don't think that. Like I said, Israel serves a really important function in the US-led empire, whereas I think it was a little bit easier for Western elites to just cut South Africa loose when it was clear that it was a lost cause. I think they're going to cling a lot longer to Israel because of the function that Israel serves in securing sort of geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. So I don't think it's going to just go away overnight. I'm not going to sit here and predict that, but it does seem like a Rubicon has been crossed. I think that's the takeaway that I can't escape right now. A Rubicon has been crossed here. And this is just going to escalate. And the more that they try to stop this, the more it's going to continue. And they can try whatever. They can ban TikTok. They're trying every fucking tactic that they could think of to make this stop. But it's not going to stop, though. If Israel falls, so does Western hegemony. So America will go into World War III to preserve the illegal state of Israel. I mean, that is the difference. Hey, Duke. That's why I've even though there's a lot of similarities to the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, I think that's exactly why it's not going to be quite as simple to be cut loose by the West. I saw a tweet that said Netanyahu claimed Hamas had trained 20K students and assumed it was a shitpost, but honestly, who knows? I mean, they're saying that it's foreign. Netanyahu and American leaders are coming right out and saying that it's some kind of like foreign influence operation. I don't know. I saw the tweet as well about how Netanyahu said that Hamas was like training 20K students in Iran. Which, listen, if Hamas somehow managed to get 20,000 American students over to Iran to like whatever, finance them or organize them, you gotta tip your cap to them. I think that's just a really impressive accomplishment. Similar to the whole Havana Ray microwave headache weapon. You know, got to tip your cap to them if they manage to pull that off. That's a really impressive feat of organization. The Netanyahu thing is funny, yes, but it scares the shit out of me. Yeah, I mean, Carrie Wave, look how they're trying to start designating these like NGOs as like supporting terrorism and stuff. Like, that is something that does concern me. Like I said, if they just refuse to cut Israel loose because it's just an impossibility, if it's just this full like murder-suicide pact that they have with Israel, they could just like say, okay, if you support Palestine, you support terrorism, and just start locking people up en masse or worse. You know, it's already happening, but it could get a lot worse, you know, for everyone. I don't think that will actually accomplish what they want it to accomplish, but it very well might start taking that kind of shape. Being unhinged and doing unhinged things is part of their strategy. Well, and these are acts of desperation. This is what I mean. Like, there could be other ways to go about doing this, but it's like, it's just these people are they're scared. I mean, it's scary. It's scary because when these very powerful people are scared, and I think what they're showing now is that they are scared. They see as much as we do that this Rubicon has been crossed, that they can't just like stick this back together. But when powerful people are scared, they can start acting out in desperation, and they can be extremely harmful. I have to hop in a work call. I just want to note that on this, that Adam says they're calling me Uncle Tom before deleting his Twitter account. I saw that. Yeah, it's very cool. That's like he's advocating for police and the National Guard to bust up these protests, and then it just dismisses the fact that Jewish people are a huge part of these movements by just calling them Uncle Toms. Here's NYU professor Scott Galloway.
And I do think there is a double standard. I walked by NYU last night. What I saw was peaceful protest. But I can tell you, if I went into the NYU square with a white hood on and said, lynch the blacks or burn the gays, my ID would be shut off by that night.
Well, those are two different things, sir. Yes. That's not what's happening. So what is that analogy? Yeah, that's absolutely right. Your ID would be shut off, and that would be a good thing. That's nowhere near what is happening. So it's a little weird that you thought of that, actually. Yeah.
And I would never work in academia again. There would be no need for the words context or nuance. I wouldn't be protected by terms like First Amendment or free speech. I would be out of the world of academia. It seems like we have a double standard when it comes to hate speech as long as it's against Jews.
And we're not just talking about the exercising of free speech and protest.
It's amazing where this like fucking memo has gone out and everyone is denouncing the hate speech at these protests. This is what I was saying before, though. This is what the lobby has done on college campuses now for like years and years and years. Anytime there's Palestinian protest, it's anti-Semitic hate speech. But this shit is not working anymore. People are not buying this anymore. It's worked for years and years and years, but no one's buying it anymore. And the more that they say it, and in contrast to what Israel is currently doing right now, the less legitimacy they have. Every time they're trying to desperately to use these same tactics that they've used for years and years and years, and it's just having a diminishing returns.
People have, and there's spaces on campus for that.
Of course not. Let's see if I would love for that to be maybe challenged by the person who's supposed to be a goddamn journalist doing this interview. Maybe they could challenge that somehow. I don't think that's what's going to happen.
Exercising of free speech and protest, which we agree people have, and there's spaces on campus for that. It's what they're saying is the harassment of Jewish students.
I fucking can't stand this harassment of Jewish students and just the fact that there's Jewish students in the protests. Like, when are they going to give up on this? This idea of Jewish students. There's no such thing as like, in fact, this is an incredibly anti-Semitic belief. There's no such thing as like Jewish students that all believe the same thing. There's two groups of Jewish students. There's some Jewish students and many students who are not Jewish who support Israel. And there's a coalition of groups, including Jewish students, that don't support Israel. How fucking hard is this to understand? And I'm sure these people do understand it, but of course they have a job to do, which is selling this certain idea to their audience. But like, it's really not hard to understand. There's not one group of Jewish students that want one particular thing and are all in agreement on this. There's Jewish students that support Israel. And again, many of Israel's supporters are not Jewish. And there's Jewish students that are involved in these protests, just as there has been for the last 6 months.
So what is that? Why is there that double standard? Because of course you're right. You don't even have to say it out loud. If these things are being said about black people or gay people or Latinos or Asian or anybody else, forget it. Shut down the school. Everybody's expelled.
Of course you're right. Like zero effort to actually unpack this, or just, this is not about free speech. It's about who, these Jewish students are being targeted. Like, no, they're not. Players that a small percentage of protesters being anti-Semitic bad, but most of the idea of doing war crimes is maybe bad, maybe good. Jewish students that don't support Israel don't get counted as Jewish when it comes to it. Yeah, well, it says just look at that fucking annoying gamer journalist guy from yesterday. When people they're making this argument, they're inciting violence against Jewish people, Jewish students, and people say, well, what about the Jewish students that are part of the protests? And then instantly, it's just like Uncle Tom's. They don't count. The Jewish students that are part of these protests, they just don't count. This fucking journalism. Of course you're right. I can't believe this dog shit.
Why is there still that double standard?
I think it's complicated. I think, one, young people have a healthy gag reflex on what people our age think. And I think that's healthy. Two, I don't think Israel has draped itself in glory over the last 20 or 30 years. They've shifted from being kind of the David to the Goliath. I also think that incorrectly students on campus conflate the civil rights movement with what is going on in Palestine and have digressed, unfortunately, because of an orthodoxy promoted by me and my colleagues that there are oppressors and oppressed, and the easiest way to identify oppressors is how white and how rich they are, or fairly or unfairly. Israel is seen as ground zero for white.
Like, maybe the way to identify the oppressed and oppressors are to look at like all the heavily armed riot cops and the people that they're preventing from protesting. Maybe it's actually quite easy in this image to determine that. Literally, their signs say Palestine will be free and nothing about Jews. I mean, this is the way it's always worked, but especially over the last 6 months. They just say, it's anti-Semitic, Jewish students attacked, Jewish students threatened, and it's just treated as this obvious truth with no actual evidence of that. Nothing. Maybe the oppressed are the people with mass graves being discovered, or as this guy puts it, they haven't exactly covered themselves in glory. That's what he says. They've kind of gone from being a David to a Goliath. Yeah, maybe a little bit. Maybe that might have something to do with it.
Oppressors is how white and how...
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
The nuclear-armed, Iron Dome having, U.S.-funded state of Israel has only recently shifted from being the David in this story to being the Goliath.
Yeah. Yeah, this just happened recently. This shift has happened recently.
How rich they are, or fairly or unfairly, Israel is seen as ground zero for whiteness and how wealthy they are. And then what might sound paranoid doesn't mean I'm wrong. I think we are being manipulated, specifically youth, who their frame for the world is TikTok. And if you look at TikTok, there are 52 videos that are pro-Hamas or pro-Palestinian for every one served on Israel. This
is what it's all about, right? They just he's coming right out and saying it. Coming right out and saying it.
I think that we are being manipulated. I think Americans are easier to fool than convinced they've been fooled. But if I were the CCP, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. I think social media is sowing division and polarization in our society.
Yeah, I fucking hate the way that this idea of these protests are just anti-Semitic. Jewish students are just being targeted and being harassed, and people are just calling for the deaths of Jews. And it's just referred to as this obvious truth with zero actual evidence. Zero evidence whatsoever. And look, here's Nancy Pelosi.
You know what the protesters and the hecklers are saying about Joe Biden, the label Genocide Joe. Could support for Israel cost Democrats the election this fall?
Well, it's interesting to me that you use that term, because that's what we see at 3 o'clock in the morning outside of our house, flashing as long as this room, a sign that says that. And he has been, as I say, the force for humanitarian assistance to them. He now is calling for the ceasefire. Who's resisting the ceasefire at this point is Hamas. Remember, Hamas is a terrorist organization in our view. Hamas has in its charter the destruction of the state of Israel. So this is more complicated. In terms of your question about the election, it's in Putin's interest for, to win. And therefore, I see some encouragement on the part of the Russians of some of what's going on. I trust the sincerity of many of the demonstrators. It's organic, it's spontaneous, it's real. But some of it, I think, has a Russian tinge to it.
There's a Russian tinge to it. Like, this is all they fucking have. They really did. These people are just unbelievable. I'm wondering, too, this whole thing of like, oh, it's in Putin's benefit for Trump to be in power. I would like for someone to explain how that is. Seriously. How does Putin benefit in any way from Trump being president versus Biden? Trump went along with arming and funding Ukraine when he was president. Trump sanctioned Iran and Russia when he was president because he was getting all this pressure to do it. Like, meaningfully, what the fuck is the difference? What's Trump going to be doing differently in Palestine? Nothing. They just passed a spending bill to give money to Israel and Ukraine in addition to Taiwan, and all these like Trump Republicans supported it. In fact, though, worth pointing out, the only people, and if you're watching this and you're getting ready to take some shit out of context or get mad about something, it doesn't mean that these people are good now or that I think they can be trusted, but it's worth pointing out. The only people in the US government who voted against funding Israel and Ukraine are Republicans. That's just a fact. And it's like Matt Gaetz and all these fucking psychos. They're the only ones, though, that are actually voting to not fund Israel and Ukraine and Taiwan. But the reality is, when Trump was president, he supported the deep state. He supported the deep state. They continued arming and funding Ukraine the whole time that he was president. What did Trump do meaningfully that changed anything in terms of like the political calculus for Russia or Putin or whoever? Here's an important viewpoint as well. Okay, and I think it's important to look at this now, because now you see we're going to start looking at some of the images, like these encampments being attacked by the police, protesters being attacked by police. And we're seeing the same thing as we saw in 2020 in the George Floyd protests, which these are peaceful protests, which the police are turning into aggressive, hostile, violent situations. This guy does a really eloquent job of explaining that.
Most definitely. If the police had never came, we would have followed the schedule set out by PSC. It was a variety of scholastic teach-ins, lunch breaks. It was, study hours on the lawn, a peaceful demonstration. And now that the police have come, it has now turned into like a clash of students wanting our own campus sovereignty and UT Austin and UTPD and state troopers trying to quell dissent.
It's really worth pointing out as well that when students do this in other countries, such as China, and when they're met with state repression for their speech, for having legitimate concerns and trying to force the government to act a certain way, and it's met with violence, that gets held up by the US government as an example of how these places are authoritarian dictatorships and they're illegitimate. And they're just they're run by these violent autocrats. This exact thing. And in fact, when you look at like Tiananmen, which we're still talking about Tiananmen 40 years later. And that's a case where like the students in that movement were like attacking soldiers and burning them alive and killing them. Which obviously is not happening at all here, but they're getting met with this brutal state violence, and this has only just started. Now, this is just going to continue escalating now. This exact thing, or like attacking journalists, not only attacking students, but attacking journalists. Oh, our beautiful press freedom. And we saw numerous examples of assaults on press members during the George Floyd protests. Numerous. But now we're seeing it again. And again, we hear about fucking this assault on press freedoms in Nicaragua. Oh, Ortega is so hostile to the press. Or China or Venezuela or Cuba or whatever. Shit, sorry. Number one on the Freedom Index, baby.
Move back, move back, move back, move back, move back.
30 years running. What was hilarious too is that like the news reporter that was with this cameraman I saw last night was actually retweeting comments from people saying like he hit the police with his camera, he rushed the police, they deserve it. And the fucking Fox newscaster that this guy was with, this poor bastard, was retweeting comments being like he deserved it. This is Democracy Manifest. Like, again, not only crushing student movements, but crushing press when they're trying to report on this. This is the shit that happens in other countries and places like Nicaragua, like nothing like this is happening. It's like, we're kicking out some Western-backed like NGOs and propaganda outlets. And we hold that up as an example for their authoritarian, autocratic tendencies. Oh, you're upset. Just look at this image.
Holy shit. Holy shit. Holy
this is
shit.
USC. Like, it's all over the country now.
Shit. Holy shit.
It is all over the country. Jackbooted thugs rolling up to destroy these student. That's USC. There's Austin. Let's look at what was going on in Austin. Oh, and there's the photographer.
Who are you with?
I'm with Fox 7.
Fox 7?
Yeah,
What's your name?
Carlos.
Carlos, what do you think of this?
I think it's, they were pushing me and they say that I hit an officer. I didn't hit an officer. They were pushing. You know what I mean? They were pushing me.
I'm a legal observer. What's your name?
Arrest today at Emory University. We got to read the statement from Emory University too, because it's really good.
Name and date of birth? We're going to send attorneys to you.
Has this ever happened?
No, it's never happened to me. You know what I mean? I was just covering things.
Did you tell them you were the press?
Yeah, I told them that I was the press.
And a gigantic.
This one
fucking
says
camera.
I was hitting an officer. I was not hitting nobody. You know?
Does Stag stick a poke me?
The jackbooted thugs going in to bust up these student movements and arresting journalists and assaulting them. Like, once again, it's almost useless to point out this hypocrisy. Just worth pointing out. This is what the United States sanctions governments over, stabilizes them, embargoes, for a lot less than this. Okay, here's Emory College just a few minutes ago. 2 hours ago, 2 hours ago. Check this shit out. They're just fucking, this is brutal. They have him subdued, putting him in cuffs and just tasing him. He's on the ground. Like, that's like torture. He's being tased when he's on the ground getting cuffs put on. That is psychotic. He's really resisting with 3 cops on top of him. Eventually, we just have to actually shut it down for Palestine, whether that's some kind of wider encampment movement spreading from universities to general public spaces, general strike. Well, this is it. It's like, this is not going away. Like, they can try and try and try. They can use whatever tactics they want to try and stop this, but like, it's not going away. It is just going to further in. This is not going to stop. And like, look at this. It's not just, it's banning TikTok and calling in the cops and the National Guard. Like, look at what else they're doing. They're also about to go after SJP and similar groups. Look at this thread here. Legislation getting no media coverage moving rapidly through Congress that targets U.S. nonprofit orgs, with the immediate and explicit target being orgs involved in Palestine protesting. Talking here about a bipartisan legislation the House passed last week, 382 to 11. That was introed last week in the Senate. Here's the link. It's S4136, 118th Congress. Have we heard about any of this? Have we heard about this at all? This bill gives a single U.S. official authority to strip U.S. nonprofit orgs of their nonprofit status in a preemptory manner, with virtually no limitations, accountability, or meaningful recourse, based merely on his declaration they are terrorist supporting organizations. The explicit target of this legislation is orgs involved in or supporting protest against Israel's war on Gaza, most notably SJP. But of course, which is, again, heavily involved by Jewish people, Jewish students. But of course, if passed into law, it could be used against any tax-exempt org working on an objective disfavored by the administration in power. The intent behind the bill, the targeting of groups engaged in protest for Palestinian rights and lives, has been made explicit. Here's the chair of the House Ways and Means Committee when it was marking up passing the bill last November. As this committee has jurisdiction over the tax code and must address two related issues that have been laid bare in the aftermath of October 7th. First, tax-exempt charities operating in the United States are providing support, encouragement, and potential financing to Hamas and Hamas-affiliated groups. This concern is not theoretical. In the early 2000s, the U.S. government identified and shut down the Holy Land Foundation in the United States. That foundation funneled $12.4 million from Americans to Hamas. Shockingly, a 501c3 entity called American Muslims for Palestine and its related C4 have been sued in federal court for operating as an alter ego of the Holy Land Foundation. The two groups have many of the same leaders and may be continuing the same efforts to support Hamas. Second, the eruption of hatred toward Jewish students on college campuses after the October 7th attack has been disturbing to watch. But the organization around it is not some organic movement. It has been carefully built over years, in part by American Muslims for Palestine. They helped build, shape, and train a group called Students for Justice in Palestine, or SJP. Many SJP events have involved pro-Hamas slogans and have led to intimidation, harassment, and violence against Jewish students. So think about all the rhetoric we're hearing right now about China and Russia financing these movements, and there's this explicit bill being passed right now to go after and target these groups and designate them as terrorist supporting or terrorist sympathizing. As a reminder, U.S. charitable organizations, like all U.S. entities, are already barred by law from providing material support for terror and already face intense scrutiny. The goal of the new legislation is to dispense with the due process, including the need for evidence afforded under law to targeted groups, empowering a single U.S. official to act as prosecutor, judge, jury, and executioner of U.S. orgs whose viewpoints the official disagrees with. Those who prioritize shutting down pro-Palestine protest above all else may view this legislation as excellent news. Those concerned with Palestinian rights and lives and those who view with concern the rapid erosion of free speech protest rights in the U.S. may disagree. Either way, it is remarkable that this legislation, which has profound implications for protest and free speech in the U.S., is so far going pretty much unnoticed. I will link this thread for people in the chat if you. No, and Sean, like what you're saying, this is all by design. Like what you're describing is a central part of the Zionist ideology, right? Creating conditions where they can then claim that Jewish people are not safe. No? That's what Biden said a few weeks ago. Without Israel, no Jew in the world is safe, which is a psychotic thing to say when you're the president of the United States. But they literally act in a way to encourage anti-Semitism and create the conditions for Jewish people to be persecuted, which they view as just strengthening Israel. Weird how easy it is for the American system to reconfigure itself in this manner, almost like this was the plan all along for when the class war heated up. Yeah, absolutely, Sam. And look at all the cop cities being built. It's not just in Atlanta. There's cop cities being built around the United States. Who are you talking about, Matt? Talking about Naomi Klein? I think I missed some Naomi. How long before any donations to Palestinian aid groups get your bank accounts frozen and assets seized? I mean, we're not far away from that. Like, this is, if this continues to spiral out of control, we're not far away from that. Oh. When this is just declared a foreign influence op that supports terrorism, they can give themselves the power to do this kind of stuff. That's what I mean. I think they're more inclined to go full authoritarian on this than to just cut Israel loose like they may have done in South Africa when it became clear that like the tide had turned on that. And there was nothing that they could do to save the South African project. It became clear that it was dead weight, so they cut them loose. And then they pretended that they were against apartheid all along. It's not quite as simple with this. They're not going to cut Israel loose to the same extent. They need Israel to continue acting as their attack dog in this region. Yeah, I do think that there's a lot more likelihood that they're going to go further in that direction than eventually cut them loose and start trying to do the right thing. People are asking me to play this clip here.
Lázaro Abuelo, you are a father of a student at USC who's here. Tell me why you're on campus. You also said you're a Los Angeles resident.
I am here to support my daughter. She's studying here, and they're protesting against the genocide. And that's why I am against the genocide. My family is against the genocide. We think that nobody, no kid deserves to be killed.
Well, why did you come down to campus?
Yeah, because my daughter started organizing too. Says, hey, we have to support Palestine. And that's why I am here. Not only to support Palestine, we want the genocide to stop.
Do you know where your daughter is right now?
Right now, gotta be somewhere because the police start chasing all the students. As you see, they are threatening. If we don't leave the campus, we are gonna be arrested. But the students are so brave. Look at them. They don't want to leave the campus.
Does that concern you, though, as a father, that your daughter is somewhere?
Even though it concern me, but my daughter did the right decision. If she rather to be arrested fighting for Palestine, I will be the happiest daddy. I will be the happiest daddy if she's doing the right thing. And I know she's doing the right thing. If the police arrest me now, I am willing to go with the students. I have no problem because what I am doing is the right thing, fighting against a genocide. I have kids, not only the teenagers, I have a 7 years old, and I imagine being a father in Palestine to see my kid be assassinated by Israel. That's not good. We are humanity. This is not a matter of religion, political, no. We are humans. We cannot support any genocide.
Well, we will let you go and find your daughter, and I appreciate you talking to us.
Free Palestine, always.
Thank you for talking to us.
Peace with Palestine, always.
Quite the story there.
Hell yeah. I want to run through a brick wall for this. Guys. I had something to look at as well. And like, this is just shit that like I don't fucking understand. Unless he deleted it. Yeah. Eddie Hassan, who got fucking fired from his job. Like, as much as he tries to like equivocate and be Mr. like sensible, gets fired from his job because he still is too critical of Israel. What I do not understand the point of this, like this bullshit and this idea of like, oh, I'm so brave. I'm so brave for taking this stance. Multiple things can be true. Some Jewish students at Columbia have endured horrible anti-Semitic abuse. Some Israel supporters are using anti-Semitism to smear often Jewish pro-Palestine protesters. Many innocent Gazans continue to be killed as media focuses on Columbia. And I condemn all three of these things, by the way. Oh, well, fucking let's give you a goddamn award. What a brave stance. What a brave stance you've taken to this day. I think it's all bad. And what is he doing? Like, what is this? Who are these Jewish students at Columbia that have endured horrible anti-Semitic abuse? Who are they? And what is the abuse? What has happened? Let's hear one example of this horrific abuse. And we can't use this like fake eye stabbing that we heard about. Oh, I was stabbed in the eye. No, you were not. No, you were not. I can't stand this shit. Like, and he spends a lot of time taking a good position on this and using his platform to advocate for this good position. And then he completely undercuts it with this shit. Now, let's hear one example of this horrific, horrible anti-Semitic abuse, he said. I'm going to say it has been so fantastic over the last couple of weeks, too. It's not a good faith conversation, and engaging in it further, as though it is, continues to fuel a manufactured narrative. We have institutionalized anti-Arab racism and Islamophobia, which anti-Semitism is not. Pro-Israel students on campus have also been accused of throwing anti-black racist slurs and comments at black students, the foundational racism that is institutionalized in this country. There's a reason why both of these institutionalized racisms are not at all crossing the discourse radar. Like, 0 point in perpetuating this bad faith narrative. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. And that's the thing. I was pushing back. I responded to some tweet from Jake Tapper the other day, where Jake Tapper was doing this thing about the anti-Semitic protesters. And it's the same thing. Like, your evidence is a bunch of hysterical text messages. And I had some guy go into my DMs and being like, you're doing a disservice to Palestinians, to Gazans. I feel bad for Gazans that you're being a spokesperson for them because you condone this anti-Semitism and you support it. You know? And every single thing that I've seen from like any kind of like Palestinian activist has said, stop giving oxygen to these bad faith narratives. Stop apologizing for pro-Palestine protest. Stop distancing yourself from it. Stop equivocating. That's the message that I get from like Palestinians about their views on this kind of thing. That's the message I've been getting. Stop playing this fucking game and fueling these manufactured narratives. That's the message that I've gotten. But then when I do that, people say, you're doing such a disservice to people in Palestine, to Gazans, for not taking these claims seriously. Robert, you talking about the guy who accused you of that and deleted his response after I demanded proof? I don't know if he deleted it. He might have just blocked you, Husker, because I know he blocked me immediately after. He sent me a DM and then blocked me immediately after. I won't read the whole thing. Let me see if I can find it. It's in here somewhere. Is this guy. That the Israeli government loves people like you. Honestly, you're probably getting paid by the Zionists to feed their optics. You're a liability to Palestinians, not an asset. Because I don't play this game where I pretend to advance these totally bad faith discourse cycles and pretend and make sure to show how serious I am by denouncing all the terrible anti-Semitic abuse that these students are enduring. It wasn't the gamer guy. It was this guy, Daniel. Daniel. At Daniel Rotger 511. Don't do targeted harassment to this. I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do any targeted harassment to Daniel Rotger 511. Okay? I'm telling you right now, don't do it. Look, this is an amazing turn of phrase here. This is from the New York Times opinion piece. I don't know who it is. It's probably fucking Brett Stevens. Just read. This is amazing. You see, most Americans think you have to be humiliated to be helped. And you can't just stand up for people. You need to explain why they're bad and barely deserve help. They're being an adult by barely helping them. Yeah, exactly. I'm sure that's how you get taken seriously. Just listen to this. The other night, this is from the New York Times. The other night, I watched a dad coming from the protest with his little girl, giving a hard few final snaps on the drum he was carrying, nodding at her in crisp salute, percussing his perspective into her little mind. This is not peaceful. These are these like dangerous protests. They have to like, they're trying so fucking hard to manufacture this narrative. Talking to your daughter about apartheid is violence. It's not like Israel is involved in promoting Zionism to kids in Israel or Canada or the United States or anywhere else. Surely that would be considered violence. Shout out to Hassan for this one. This is pretty.
I'm trying to imply very patronizing. Utilizing the hostages. Yeah, I am being patronizing. I don't know who the fuck you are, and you're over here chirping all the way from fucking London about Palestine and doing a both sides are fucking fine type bullshit. Where you're talking about how you want to fucking free Palestine, but also simultaneously, you know, both sides got a lot going on. Shut the fuck up. You don't know anything, okay? I don't give a I'm trying to.
Can you say fuck on Piers Morgan? I didn't realize. I guess it's Piers Morgan uncensored. I was surprised by that, though. Palestine. Yeah, that's good. You do have to hand it to him. But look, here it is again. Like, we saw the clip of the professor on MSNBC talking about this. And look, here's their explicitly saying that this is why they're banning TikTok, in case there was any confusion about this.
Well, let's look at where young people are getting their news. Nearly a third of adults 18 to 29, these young people in the U.S. are regularly getting their news exclusively from TikTok. Pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas hashtags are generating 50 times the views on TikTok right now, despite the fact that polling shows Americans overwhelmingly support Israel over Hamas. These videos
polling repeatedly shows that Americans on both sides of the spectrum want the United States government to stop funding Israel. I don't know what polling this motherfucker's looking at.
More reach than the top 10 U.S. news websites combined. This is not coincidence. The Chinese Communist Party is doing this on purpose.
This is such pathetic front-runner behavior. They're losing the information war and they just can't stand it. They've had full control over the messaging for generations, and now they're losing it and they can't fucking handle it. So it's like, my mom says it's my turn now. My mom says you need the shitty like third-party controller. You have to use that. My mom says it's my turn. You know what I mean? It's just so pathetic because they've lost control of the narrative, and that's the only reason it is. No, it is floundering. This is what I mean. There's this palpable sense of desperation right now, which is new. Like, we've been talking about Palestine for a while on this show. We've been covering this stuff for a while. There's this palpable sense of panic and desperation right now, which I have never observed in all the time that I've been paying attention to this and talking about it. There's a palpable sense of desperate panic. A mad cat stage of imperialism. But you know what I mean? It's like it can be scary. It's a scary moment. Like I said, this is a very powerful empire still, even if they are in decline. And there's a lot of damage that they can do, still continuing in Gaza and domestically. But this is still new. Like, it's working. You know? They're scared. They're afraid. It's afraid. And that's why I can't help but be kind of excited by it, even though it's entering this whole new kind of territory that could get really scary. I'm not denying that. But it's also just impossible to maintain the ongoing status quo either. So it does feel like this breaking point is being reached here. And they're either gonna use the state to crush this, or we're gonna keep pushing. You know what I mean? I feel like we're coming to that point, that kind of fork in the road. And maybe they will successfully crush this movement through these kind of means, just making it impossible to access the information, busting up these protests with state violence, designating any support for Palestine to be support for terrorism, and cutting off people's bank accounts or censoring them or whatever. That could very much happen. Or people are going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And you know what? There's more of us than there is of them. Yeah, and it will just create more resistance. It's true. I do appreciate how they just fully come out and admit exactly why this TikTok ban is happening. In case there was any confusion.
At Columbia. When we talk about anti-Semitism on campus, that's a Jewish student at Columbia. When we talk about anti-Semitism on campus, that's taking the spotlight away from Gaza, away from Palestine, and the Palestinian students on campus, and putting it back onto me. I am perfectly safe here, and this has all been a distraction because they don't want us talking about the non-stop massacre of Gaza, of Palestinian civilians being taken out by the IDF. I grew up being taught that Israel was an important part of my Jewish identity, and part of being a Jew was supporting Israel. I was raised Zionist, and then I met a Palestinian for the first time and heard their perspective, and was able to realize that I was on the wrong side of this, that I'd been taught the wrong side of this. To me, calling in the police was an act of desperation. They know where the students stand. They saw the students come together to support their suspended and arrested friends. We see that other universities are following in our footsteps, and we welcome them. We just want to make sure that they do it in solidarity with Gaza and with Palestine, and that the focus is not on us. But we hope that this can be an important step in the liberation of Palestine and an end to the occupation and an end to the
multiple things. So I don't know. It really does feel. I remember in 2020 seeing that police station get burned and being like, okay, it feels like the Rubicon has been crossed here. And we saw those months of police riots, and eventually it's like that Hunter S. Thompson quote, we see the wave recede. Although it does lead to like organizational structures being implemented. It feels again like this Rubicon has been crossed now. There's no going back to the previous status quo. This generation is lost. Israel has lost all legitimacy for this generation. Basically, my generation and younger. It's completely gone. And this is what they've been desperately trying to avoid for years and years and years, for Israel to be the next South Africa that becomes the target of this like international coalition of activism, and with these campaigns of divestment and boycotts. Like, they've been trying to avoid this for years and years, and now it's happening. Now it's really happening. And I feel like it's inevitable that there's a large percentage of people who have changed their minds are on the right side, but after Biden loses, will hopscotch back over to not caring because when they care, lost. Maybe, Marty, but I think there's a flip side to that argument as well, which is that if Trump was in charge and there was jackbooted thugs coming in to arrest these student protesters, or if Trump was like subsidizing this level of violence and genocide, I actually think a lot more people would be against it. There's a lot of liberals that are still digging in their heels and refusing to like acknowledge this because it's Biden in charge, and this switch will flip in their minds the moment Trump is the one holding the bag. It's actually crazy that they were almost winning the campaign of BDS is anti-Semitic, and now that's not even part of the conversation at all. Well, the thing, like, think about it, Kev. Like, think about how they destroyed the Corbyn movement. That's not happening. That's not happening again. Do you think if they try that shit again, if they try to destroy a social movement with these accusations of anti-Semitism, do you think anyone's going to buy it? No. No. You know, I just think something has fundamentally shifted here. They've lost this argument. They've lost their legitimacy. They do not have this ability to manipulate people anymore. And when I say they, I'm referring to supporters of Israel, who are, of course, as we know, predominantly not Jewish. Just make that perfectly clear to anyone who might be watching this. The IHRA definition of anti-Semitism. Well, I don't know if I would say it's gone, Kev, because like they're still trying it. They're still trying to do this tactic. And I suppose there's still somewhat of an audience for it, but it has less and less legitimacy. It has less and less effect. I'm going to move on to talking about a breakthrough news video for this. I have about another hour and a little bit before I got to get going. If you can, folks, please support this program. I would love to just be able to do this show for free and just hang out with people and put together this show and you know, have this community. I would be happy to do it for free. Unfortunately, certain economic realities dictate that I must make this little number at the bottom of the screen go up. You know, I have to pay rent, etc., and provide for a child as well. If you enjoy this program, it is a lot of work to do this show. I do this show 3-4 hours a day, every single day. I spend a lot of time writing and researching things and promoting the stuff that I do on here and trying to like build this community. It takes up a whole lot of time. It's basically my main job. And the only way that I can keep doing this is if people subscribe to this program. You know, I've been really happy to be able to have a voice outside of this mainstream media ecosystem that does not allow these kinds of like viewpoints to ever escape containment. That's really meaningful to me. The fact that
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
If possible, folks, if you can, please do subscribe to the show, subscribe or gift subs or bits or tips or whatever it is. It's the only way that I can keep doing this show. Kijiji Genie, thank you for the gifted sub to our friend Only Fact. Thanks, Kijiji Genie. I appreciate it. Anyone else want to support this program before I move on here? 4 out of 35 subs today. Really hoping to get to the old sub goal, if possible. Once again, it's just the only way that I can do this each and every day is if people subscribe. That's just the way it goes. It's the way it is. So if possible, please do support this program by subscribing or gifting subs. Join the community, support the community. Every little bit helps, and again, it helps me. It's the only way that I'm able to do this show, which is something that I appreciate a whole lot. Let's push crypto schemes to the chaos zone.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Lodane would never allow that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I really appreciate it. Thank you, Anon.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Are there any other fine
You can count on me. You're
like
going to have good old Rob to talk you
Anon,
through all
once
this.
Again, thank you for the 5 gifted subs, the most Christ-like of all sub gifters. If there's
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
My goodness.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Doc, thank you very, very much for the 5 gifted subs. Doc Hollywood, I really, really
You've
appreciate
just
it
become
so
an
much.
elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
I feel like that was too many alerts.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Comrade Bushy, thank you for the 5 gifted subs as well. I really, really appreciate all the support.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anon, thank you for the 2 gifted subs as well. Thank you, Anon. Very, very
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I'll do the shoulder dance. I'll do the shoulder dance just for you.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Joe, thank you very, very much for the 5 gifted subs as well. Very, very kind of you, Joe. Thank you. I really appreciate the support. Seriously. We do have a bit of a hype train going here as well. We're in level 5 now of a hype train. 9 subs to get to the goal. Very, very close. It's within reach. It's within grasp. We do have a hype train as well. So not only can you support this program and support this community, you can also get access to some really cool and fun Twitch hype train emotes. 9 subs.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We're going to have a production meeting where we discuss how you're rusty with the dance. I don't think I've ever done it as successfully as I did in that
You can count on me.
GIF.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I really don't. The Matante dance. The Matante en calice. Mask loves you. Thanks for the gifted sub. Thank you, Mask. Very cool. Always good when your producer has meetings where they make you dance for it. It's a living. Me and Lodane do the scene in True Lies. I'm Jamie Lee Curtis, and Lodane is Schwarzenegger. That's how the production meetings go. You want to make it in this industry or not? Exactly. You listen to this while the hype train is. Actually, you know what, Joe? You know what? I feel a little weird.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
sub aspect of Twitch with like Palestine stuff, it feels really exploitative and kind of fucked up. Even though I think it is cool to watch that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I will put on
Canada's
the song.
most watched Montreal-based political Twitch streamer.
I think when we combine the two, it makes me feel a little weird, but I do think we should watch the video that you just sent. You can watch the song later if people donate enough. This is when I feel fucking gross doing this. Sikalu Fakus, thanks for the gifted sub. I really appreciate it. And thanks, Stu, as well, for the Prime. Thanks, Stu. 32 whole months of Prime. It is Canada's most watched Montreal-based political Twitch streamer. Exactly. Only 6 subs to go, folks. We're 27% of the way through level 5 of this hype train. 6 subs to get to the goal. You shouldn't feel gross for making a living. Everyone needs to survive, but I get it. No, and I know that, Joe. Like, and I know people in the community understand it. I guess I just like to try and separate. You know, I do the commentary or the analysis or whatever it is. I try and raise some funds, and then we go back to the analysis. I think when we start mixing it, that's when I feel weird. I feel weird about it. 30 seconds to go, folks. 6 subs left. 30 seconds to go in this hype train. We could get past level 5 and get some really cool new emotes. Only 6 to go to get to the goal. Only 6 little bitty subs to go. You get that the worlds collide. Sometimes it's unavoidable, but like, I really do try to keep them separated.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Weenus, thank you very much for the gifted sub as well. Thank you, Weenus. Look at all these new emotes. Very cool. Look at all this. Those are good ones. It's okay, Weenus. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to really quickly take a little break, okay? And I will be back in just a moment. I'm going to put on this this song that Joe sent over. Thanks again, everyone who supports this program. I love you so much. The fact that I'm able to do this show and have these conversations and do this analysis or commentary, whatever it is, I'm able to make a little living from it is really, really special to me. It's not lost on me, and I really, really do appreciate it a lot. Seriously. I'll be right back.
Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen. Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen. Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen. Och vi har odlat jorden. Och vi har odlat jorden. Och vi har skördat vetet. Och vi har skördat vetet. Vi har plockat citronerna. Och vi har plockat citronerna. Och pressat oliverna. Och pressat oliverna. Och hela världen känner till vår jord. Och hela världen känner till vår jord. Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen. Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen. Och vi har kastat stenar på. Och vi har kastat stenar på. Soldater och poliser. Soldater och poliser. Och vi har skjutit raketer. Och vi har skjutit raketer. Mot våra fiender. Mot våra fiender. Och hela världen känner till vår kamp. från imperialismen. Och vi ska bygga upp vårt land. Och vi ska bygga upp vårt land. Till socialismen. Till socialismen. Och hela världen kommer att bevittna. Och hela världen kommer att bevittna. Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve Palestina och krossa sionismen. 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 Leve, leve, leve Palestina. Leve, leve, leve Palestina.
I did this tweet yesterday. Might have seen. Now it's gone pretty viral. Like, I kind of thought it was clear that I was just like illustrating a point. I did this tweet. It says cops when little kids are being murdered in their school versus cops when college students are protesting genocide. And like this image on the right is not actually an image of the police from one of these protests. I thought that was clear. I was just taking a picture of a cop looking like a lazy piece of shit versus a bunch of cops with like all suited up and kitted up to illustrate a basic point. I think it's possible that some people thought that the image on the right is actually an image from one of these like protests. So I maybe spread a little bit of disinformation there. I don't know. I didn't get community noted because I feel like it's obvious what I was doing. In fact, if there's anyone that is part of the community notes thing, I'd be interested to see if there's been any activity on it, because I haven't seen like any community notes, so I assume that like it's obvious that it's I'm just taking images to illustrate a basic point. May have spread a little bit of disinformation there, but like, oh well, you know. There's a lot of disinformation floating around on one side, so I mean, why can't we have a little bit? We can have a little bit of disinformation as a treat. And anyways, the basic point is the same. The point stands. I think most people understand that, although I do think some people believe that the picture on the right. But if you see the cops in these Texas protests, they are militarized. This is very itchy. Like, I don't know. These cops, these are not the... I think we already looked at the clip because this is when the cameraman gets arrested, I believe. Okay, so you looked at the image that I used. That was not the same image, but like this is not fucking far off. Like these are the actual cops at Texas rolling in. It's so dystopian too. It's like they're public safety officers. So I guess it's not that. The only difference is I don't believe they have like assault rifles. The only difference. Not a huge difference. Okay, anyway. Here's Brian Becker.
We have two Americas. In the last week and behind the scenes, the Pentagon is working with Israel to carry out the plan for the invasion of Rafah. And at the same time, colleges and universities have erupted in mass protests, and they are spreading throughout the United States. These are protests in support of the Palestinian people. This is
quite a fit for Brian.
Welcome to the Socialist Program. I'm your host, Brian Becker. Today we're talking with Leanne Fulihan. She is a Palestinian organizer with the Shut It Down for Palestine Coalition. She's also a popular educator, organizer, and the education director at the People's Forum. She is also an editor at 1804 Books. Leanne, welcome back to the Socialist Program.
Thanks so much for having me back.
Thank you. Leanne, you have been at Columbia University. You have been in the streets. People in the thousands, maybe tens of thousands of people all over the country, including here in New York at Columbia. There are other campuses too. NYU, mass arrests at NYU. There were mass arrests at Columbia. The university threatened last night told the student negotiators, we're going to bring in the National Guard against you, against their own students. And this is 54 years after the massacre by the National Guard of students at Kent State who were protesting the war in Vietnam. Anyway, the threats of repression, the arrests, the brutality, it's not stopping the protests. They are growing. Let's start with that, because this is something new, or at least a return of something that used to be a dynamic factor in American politics: young people and students on the move.
Absolutely. What we've seen in the past week on the campuses that started at Columbia University here in New York, but that has spread like wildfire across the country is really incredible.
Don't Brian like that.
It's a new wave of uprising from the students, from the youth, and from everyone who's been activated through this mass mobilization for Palestine over the past 6 months. And we've seen that anytime these universities have clamped down, and we've seen very similar repressive tactics from all these different university administrations, especially the elitist universities, all of their attempts to repress or intimidate the protests has actually backfired and has given strength not only to the students, but to their supporters that are in the streets, who have been carrying out the mass movement for Palestine and who are now making sure that what happens on the campus is not isolated from the rest of the world. It's really incredible to see. I think it's a sign of the times that we're in. It's a sign of the fact that the Biden administration's attempts to repress or move on from the mass outrage over the genocide in Palestine have completely failed. And in fact, he has a much bigger problem on his hands than he might have thought previously.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the past months, the Palestinian Hamas-led, but it wasn't only Hamas-led military incursion into Israel, into areas that were formerly Palestinian villages from which Palestinian people were driven, the area right outside the wall that the Israelis have established to keep people in Gaza. Ever since then, and now it's more than a half a year, people in the United States have been in the streets in record numbers, the largest ever. On November 4th, we had 500,000 people in Washington, D.C. January 13th, a demonstration of similar size. But besides the big national protests, there are things happening every day. And all of these young people have been learning a lot. I mean, in struggle, coping with the problem of demonization, being ridiculed and caricatured as anti-Semites, being the victims of police repression, being, in the case of Columbia, suspended from school, kicked out of their dorms. They've learned a lot. And as a consequence, we have a new generation of progressive young activists and organizers. And, you know, you've been there with them. These people are emerging as real leaders, and I don't think this is going to stop.
I don't think so either. And I think what's really interesting and incredible about this particular moment, and I think has happened in different moments in history in the past as well, is that when these students speak out and when they take action like this, and then they come against the instruments of state repression, it suddenly makes it very real what they are actually up against. I mean, the students at Columbia University are demanding divestment. They're demanding something very reasonable.
Just like the anti-apartheid
something that doesn't
students
necessarily
were
need
doing.
an NYPD response. But what is being demonstrated is, in fact, going against the very close and important relationship of the United States and Israel, and putting pressure on the institutions that make that relationship possible, is actually triggering a response of state violence. Last night, the president of Columbia University threatened student negotiators with bringing in the National Guard to clear out their peaceful encampment. And the students very correctly and very courageously knew that this meant the end of good faith negotiations. And they made the very correct move to blast this to the media and to put the university on notice. What we're seeing is, in real time, these students are not just expressing a political position. They're not just saying, we're bothered by the genocide. We don't want we don't want our alma mater to have these connections to the genocide. They're saying, we understand the way these institutions, whether or not they're academic or financial or whatever they are, these institutions are actually serving the interests and facilitating the possibility for the United States to continue executing the genocide of the Palestinian people. And they're saying, we are ready to do what we need to do to make that stop, and to put as much pressure as possible on the institution itself.
Sam says, I'm pretty scared, but also very interested in how the situation is going to escalate on the home front in the next few months to years. I mean, I guess that's the thing, Sam. Is like the only way out is through. We gotta keep going. We're Thelma and Louise going off the cliff. Let's just keep going. That's kind of my view. Doesn't mean that that's going to be fun. But what else are we supposed to do? Are we going to quit? No, I don't think so. So just got to keep going. See what happens.
To put it in a position where it's going to have to acquiesce to some version of their demands. So I think it's a really incredible moment, and I think it also shows how much of a threat this change in consciousness is to the White House, to the imperialist agenda, and to everybody who is profiting right now off of the massacre of the Palestinian people.
Indeed. I think the students last night at Columbia, and you, Leanne, you're the education director at the People's Forum, the Answer Coalition, others were Palestinian Youth Movement.
They're also trying to go after the People's Forum and Answer and all these other groups and say they're foreign funded as well.
The progressive movement that's been leading these demonstrations around the country for the past, more than a half a year now. Everybody sprang into action last night. The president, or the negotiators for the president at Columbia, said, if you don't surrender, if you don't end your encampment, we're going to call in the National Guard. Now this, for our audience that's outside the United States, who may not know or maybe are too young to remember what happened at Kent State, and we have some footage from Kent State, this has a very particular meaning in the United States, because when the National Guard was called to
talked a little bit about this yesterday,
suppress demonstrations on college campuses, it led to violence.
Like Brian Becker,
it led to suppression.
That's criticism. I've seen people said like Brian Becker's like grift or whatever, talking about his grift. I don't know. I don't really think it's a grift. You spend decades of your life building an anti-war movement, and they're saying PSL and Answer and all these groups have a full grip on the entire anti-war movement. Well, fucking someone's got to do that work. Like, it's bad that they've been organizing an anti-war movement for the last several decades. Like, what the fuck? At least they're doing something. And people say like, oh, this is their grift or whatever. This is their op. And it's like, Jesus Christ, like what what are we supposed to do? Okay, let's just pack up the whatever minuscule anti-war movement that we have because it's offended these people and they think it's like an op or a grift or something like that. Like, if you're worried about PSL or these kind of like tankies monopolizing the anti-war movement, build your own anti-war movement. This has taken decades of organizing, which is something that I happen to respect a lot. personally. Again, I would have a problem with it if I disagreed with PSL's foreign policy views, but I happen to agree with them. And I didn't get my cues from them. I found myself gravitating towards this whole network of like PSL, Answer, Breakthrough News, all this stuff, because they agreed with views that I already had. And if anything Becker has done is he helped provide a historical context to a lot of these things, specifically Ukraine, that have helped me understand the whole geopolitical or geostrategic analysis of it.
Maybe are too young to remember what happened at Kent State, and we have some footage from Kent State. This has a very particular meaning in the United States because when the National Guard was called to suppress demonstrations on college campuses, it led to violence. It led to suppression. It led to actually the U.S. military forces deployed on college campuses shooting and killing students.
Don't sound like trots.
So this was designed for maximum intimidation. And the students and the People's Forum and Answer Coalition and the Palestinian Youth Movement and others went into action, exposed it, and then within a couple hours,
there was that People's Forum thing a couple years ago. Yeah, they have to pay NYC rent. Or just they get funding for, there's wealthy people that are involved in funding this. Okay, well, what the fuck? How are they supposed to get money? You need money to do stuff. And they've managed to get a few wealthy people on board with their program. That's good. That's a good thing. Whether it's Roger Waters or that Neville Roy Singham or whoever. Who cares? If their program changes, then we can complain about it. But they've managed to somehow get a few people that have wealth to support their movement. And that's bad? We're supposed to be upset by that? You know what I mean? It's like, Jesus, like, learn to take yes for an answer. This is what I'm talking about. This fetishizing, it's like they're doing something that must be wrong. They're getting rich people to support them. They're successfully organizing an anti-war movement. They're successfully gaining this media traction. So that must be bad because that sounds like winning to me. That sounds a little bit too much like winning. But the only thing we can do here in the West, on the left, such as it is fucking talk and complain and lose forever. And anytime we don't do that, we're doing something wrong. We're getting it wrong. Fuck that. I'm ready to start winning. How about that? Haters mad about being China respecters. That's what it boils down to. That's what it boils down to.
Masses of people arrived at Columbia University at like 11 o'clock at night last night and then stayed for hours. And then the university changed its tune.
What is the problem?
Anyway, before I get your response, I want to play this clip for people who may not know about the Kent State Massacre, because this is the emotive context for what it means to call the National Guard to U.S.
I would be happy to take a rich guy's money. Talk about this
NBC News
stuff.
senior correspondent Tom Brokaw takes a look back at when National Guard troops opened fire on protesting students 50 years ago today.
Kent State University, May 4th, 1970. The tragedy that day, like so much back then, was rooted in the war in Vietnam.
Ken Hammond, the ultimate China
trouble started
respecter,
4
we talked
days
to on the show,
earlier
was
with
at
President
Kent State.
Nixon's announcement that he was widening the war into Cambodia.
American units searching for North Vietnamese troops and installations. But what they will find or how long they will be here, no one can say for sure.
All right, we have a second part of that clip, which I also want to play for people to see what actually happened at Kent State.
At Kent State, the campus was in turmoil after days of protest.
Yeah, people advocating for another one of these incidents to happen.
The students ordered
and if we do get an incident like this, I really do not know what's going to happen next.
The Guard used tear gas.
Like
then,
I said, this whole
warning,
situation is an absolute powder keg that's just waiting for a spark.
They opened fire. At least a dozen students were hit. 4 were killed.
That's the emotive context, Leanne,
That's absolutely what
for
Shai
bringing the National Guard to U.S. college campuses. This was seared into the memory of everybody from that generation. 2 weeks after that, police agencies carried out the massacre at Jackson State, a black university
which we don't hear about as
in
much.
Mississippi, a similar massacre of students. So when you have the president of Columbia University, who's called before Congress just in the last week, who's being ridiculed by Congress, being demanded by the right wing in Congress, take action, take action. She tells the students who a few days earlier she had mass arrested, okay, now if you don't capitulate, we're bringing the National Guard. And the students actually did not fold.
Well, I think
an amazing
like,
testament to their
what
strength.
we're talking about is a difference between like state-sponsored violence and like actual cops or army, National Guard people doing the violence, which I think would be different. And you have right now this highly charged, highly energized, increasingly organized student movement that would be ready to go fucking ballistic were that to happen. And you could argue that the school shootings are part of state violence as well, considering the fact that all these school shooters are probably talking to feds on the other end of Discord, urging them to agree with it. That's a whole other conversation. But I do think there's a difference, though. It's not just about violence happening. It's about state-sponsored violence specifically to disrupt this highly charged up political movement.
Completely agree with you. It is really an amazing expression of their strength, of their clarity, and the fact of the level of commitment they have to the struggle that is unfolding before us right now and that has been building over the past months.
Yeah.
I think that the willingness of the university president to
Well, that's, again, we
threaten
talk about,
military...
and I don't want to like stan Brian Becker, someone I respect, and I think he does good work, but we talk about that a lot, mobilization versus organization. Did Brian Becker just join the anti-war movement and go to a couple protests and go home? No, he continued that and continued, like him among many others as well, continued organizing these like groups such as Answer and PSL that have the ability to continue to apply pressure in these moments other than just like going home after the mobilization's over. Like that's the exact difference we talk about all the time. Probably use a few more years to raise consciousness. To be honest, it looks like it could be a similar timeline to how much or they're unable to keep inflating the asset. But yeah, and that's probably going to pop even while the climate is on the brink of disaster as well. We're gonna come to this confluence of all of those things kind of crashing probably more or less at the same time, and that's going to be fun to go through.
Violence on her own students is one, a sign of her weakness and her misjudgment, of course, and the interests of the university. But I think also it's part of this general program that's coming from the White House to demonize pro-Palestinian protesters. Biden has made comments about the student movement. He said he has a program to deal with it. There's been kind of like a coordinated attempt to paint the students as anti-Semitic, as people who are creating unsafe conditions on campuses. There's been a lot of attempts to demonize the student protesters, and that hasn't worked either. I think it seems that every single time there is an attempt from different levels of government, whether it's from the university administrations or the police forces or messages from Eric Adams, for example, the mayor of New York City, or from Biden himself, it's galvanizing the students more because it's really clarifying exactly who they are up against and why. And it makes this an issue that goes beyond Palestine. The students are here demanding specific demands around divestment from financial ties with the Israeli state and the Israeli military. But if you go beyond that, once you start protesting against something like this, something like financial ties, and then the police is unleashed on you and military force is threatened on you, then you realize that it's actually the entire system that is culpable here. And it gives a whole nother level to the stakes at hand. And it's really amazing to see the students realizing this in real time, organizing around it, and and developing more collective strength as the days and the hours go by. Actually, things are changing by the hour, and the students have been responding in a very strategic and unified manner.
You mentioned earlier, Leanne, that the Israelis have not succeeded militarily in their campaign in Gaza. I mean, if you compare it to the 1982 Israeli invasion into Lebanon and the bombing of Beirut that was directed against the PLO, they drove the PLO out of Beirut. The PLO had to leave the country. That was a huge blow to the Palestinian movement. Here we are more than a half year later, not in Lebanon, not somewhere else, but in Gaza, like right there. And the Israelis have not succeeded in their military objective, which is to dismantle and crush Hamas. Hamas fighters are still fighting. It's not only Hamas. The resistance forces are still fighting. Yes, they've killed 35,000 people. 100,000 have been either wounded or killed. That's like 5% of the population of a 2.1 million people who live in Gaza. So a lot of death and destruction, but they haven't achieved their military objectives. And now Netanyahu is making the argument that in order to save his own skin, and perhaps the Biden administration agreeing with him because the pariah state status of Israel is now shared by the United States and the Biden administration, they now believe the outcome will be the invasion of Rafah, the southern part of Gaza where more than 1 million Palestinians have huddled as refugees from their other homes that have already been destroyed in Gaza. So Biden has been pretending as if he's opposed to the Rafah invasion. He's like, oh no, we have to have a clear plan for how Palestinian civilians are going to be protected if indeed you go into Rafah. So some people are reading that and saying, see, Biden is really against the invasion of Rafah. But that's not what it is. They are actually planning for the invasion of Rafah. And by they, I'm talking about the U.S. government, which Joe Biden is the commander-in-chief. I want to read to you, Leanne, from the New York Times. It's just the last couple days. U.S. military officials say that Israel should model its plan on, meaning plan for the invasion of Rafah, on the siege of Mosul, Iraq in 2017 by Iraqi forces and the U.S. Air Force. The operation destroyed large swaths of what was once Iraq's second largest city. And then it says, well, roughly 3,000 civilians were killed. It was basically pretty much an operation that saved civilians. Now, I have a clip here from, this is a U.S. general, because Mosul was destroyed. Second largest city in Iraq. Huge city, very multi-ethnic, it was Christian, Muslim, a Jewish community. There was people, there were Kurds, a very diverse part of Iraq, and the second largest city north of Baghdad. And in 2017, the U.S. destroyed it. Now, I want to play this clip. It's from a U.S. general who says, no, we didn't, we protected civilians. And then I want to play another clip after that, which is what the damage in Mosul actually looked like, and reminding people, this is what the Biden administration is telling Netanyahu should be the model for the invasion of Rafah. Let's start with the first clip. It's the general talking about how the invasion, the destruction of Mosul was great.
I reject any notion that coalition fires were in any way imprecise, unlawful, or excessively targeted civilians. I would challenge the people from Amnesty International or anyone else out there who makes these charges to first research their facts and make sure they're speaking from a position of authority. I would argue that this is, I believe, the most precise campaign in the history of warfare.
All right, Leanne, I want to show you a drone coverage of what he calls the most precise campaign in the history of warfare. Here's Mosul, everybody. Take a look. Take a look very carefully. There's some before and after pictures. Mosul is gone. Mosul is a huge, beautiful city in the northern part of Iraq, and it was destroyed. And this, Leanne, is what the Biden administration is actually preparing for Rafah. Just look at that destruction. And again, I've been to Mosul. It was a beautiful place. It was destroyed.
There's a lot to be said about this this advice that the Pentagon is giving the Israelis at this moment, and I think there's a couple of things that are important to draw out here. I think this is really important. It's not the first time, actually, in the past period, the past 6 months, that different voices from the United States have made the comparison between Mosul and Gaza. They've mostly done it along the lines of the fact that it's a small, highly concentrated, highly densely populated urban area where there's asymmetrical warfare being taken place. And so I've seen different military think tanks already make this connection. But the fact that the Pentagon is that quote that you read from the New York Times, that the Pentagon is actively advising Israel to model its Rafah operation on the operation in Mosul is absolutely ridiculous for many reasons. One, like you said, Biden is pretending to have some concern for civilians. And if we know what actually happened in Mosul, that destruction that you showed us is absolutely devastating. The numbers of casualties are at least 3 times higher than what the United States reported. They reported
Probably
Mosul
same
as
thing
an
with this situation.
example of one of the most successful evacuations. But if you actually look at what the evacuation looked like, it was putting people into very small areas and were bombed. I mean, when Biden says we need to evacuate over 1 million civilians in Rafah before the operation can take place, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked. Similar questions that perhaps people were asking in 2017 when this was happening in Mosul. Where are you going to evacuate 1 million Palestinians from Rafah when the majority of Gaza has already been destroyed by this incredibly asymmetrical?
The myth of the clean war seems like the peak of lib bullshit. Yeah, I mean, Obama's the ultimate example of it. Oh, we're gonna stop doing the bad, big, messy invasions. That's why we're gonna do smart, targeted drone assassinations instead. We're gonna have this campaign of targeted drone assassinations and proxy wars, surgical strikes. Exactly, just all complete PR bullshit. You know? Just pathetic people. As I've said many times, there is nothing more radicalizing to me. As radicalizing as George Bush was or Donald Trump, nothing more radicalizing than seeing that switch flip in the liberal mind who in 2008, I was naive enough to believe were anti-war. I thought, oh, these people understand that the war is bad and they want to end the war. Like, you realize how completely phony that is. And it's like, oh, okay. These people are actually not on my side at all, such as it is. And they all support this carnage as well because Biden's in charge. Just mindless fucking drones while we're on the subject of drones. The dronies, as I've just talked about them many times. The dronies. And they call us violent. They say we're violent. We're tankies. Because we're against this shit. Yeah, Joe, we all believed it. We all bought it. Maybe not all, but most of us. Then you start remembering they were not anti-war in 2003 as well. Yeah, I mean, I remember in like 2007, 2008, discovering people like starting to like the Vox people, like Ezra Klein, that kind of crowd. And you go back to what they were saying in 2003. I thought these were like progressive liberals. Look at the Sorkin guys, right? They're like these progressive liberals. They've got these good values. You look at what like fucking liberal, like progressive was Ezra Klein was saying in 2003 about Iraq. Like shocking. Israel used that historic election in 2008-9 to initiate Operation Cast-Lead, the first in the current era of mechanized pogrom. Walked out of a documentary screening in 2011 asking why it would drop white phosphorus on hospitals, and you start to look around and be like, geez, this is the people that I thought were on my side here actually seem to be totally okay with this. What is going on here? And then you're told I'm an anti-Semite because I am against this. And then something breaks in your brain that remains broken forever. And now this whole generation is experiencing that feeling now. Seeing firsthand the violence and depravity that's being unleashed, and then being browbeaten and told that they're racists and anti-Semites because they're against it. This entire generation is going through this feeling right now. Seems like it's usually the baddies that beat up students and lock up professors so they don't talk about all the mass grave. Usually, yeah. Usually.
Incredibly devastating bombardment campaign over the past months. The other question is, why would the United States be advising Israel this if there is actually capacity for targeted? They do have the weaponry to do targeted type attacks. We've seen them do assassinations. We've seen them, in fact, do assassinations in Gaza in the past months. They assassinated people, individuals that they wanted to take out, people whose voices were threatened. They were able to do precise targets. So it's not a question of whether or not they can or they can't. They can, but they're choosing instead a military strategy of mass destruction.
I'm going to link the video here in the chat. There's plenty more discussion about this. I don't really have the time. This seems like a great discussion. Perhaps we can look at the rest. There's a bunch more great stuff here. I know Breakthrough News is putting out another video later to put the link here because I don't have time to watch the whole thing. A little bit late. I do have to get going fairly soon. I wanted to take it. Yeah, earlier today in Emory. Among those arrested today were Noel McAfee, chair of the philosophy department at Emory University. I asked for a comment from Emory on this arrest.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do for you right now?
Yes, can you call the philosophy department office and tell them I've been arrested?
Philosophy department?
Yes, call the philosophy department office.
I will. What's your...
I'm chair of the philosophy department.
I got you.
Literally a masked thug, a jackbooted thug in a mask, arresting the chair of the philosophy department at Emory. It's just, once again, this is just what they show us, and nowhere near this, right? When they talk about freedom of the press and freedom of speech and freedom of thought and authoritarian and all this shit. Yeah, they've all been crying about the protesters wearing masks as well. And I just wanted to read this statement from the Emory students because it's really good. Look at this. This is really, honestly, an incredible statement. And this is, again, this student movement we're seeing, whether we're just talking about Israel specifically, but student activism in general, we are seeing something new right now. This is not some little minor flare up of activism. There is something that has profoundly shifted here. You can kind of just feel it in the air. And listen to this statement. Emory University purchased this building, just one example of Emory's contribution to gentrification in Atlanta. To those without homes or those displaced by gentrification. Am I missing a page here? Emory's $11 billion endowment, the 11th highest in the country, is an outsized influence in Atlanta's economy. Just 1 second. I think there's like a better version of this. Okay, here. Emory is everywhere. As the Palestine Solidarity Movement rips across college campuses, college administrators and government bureaucrats are rushing to denounce anyone taking action as a, quote, outside agitator. Can we please stop having comments about my fucking noise gate? I'll fix it later, okay? Emory is everywhere. Emory is everywhere. As the Palestine Solidarity Movement rips across college campuses, college administrators and government bureaucrats are rushing to denounce anyone taking action as an, quote, outside agitator. Those who grease the gears of the war machine think that this rhetoric will erode public support for bold actions at Emory. They are wrong. 45 years after the Camp David Accords, an infamously botched imperialist plan for peace between Israel and Egypt with no input from Palestinians, was orchestrated by an Emory faculty alum, President Carter. We observe that there is nowhere on earth outside of Emory University. We want to say as clearly as possible, we welcome outside agitators to our struggle against the ruthless genocide of Palestinians. Emory University has the highest tuition, the lowest acceptance rate, and by far the highest endowment of any institution in Georgia. Economic barriers, infamously racist standardized testing, and nepotism have barred many from studying at Emory. To students in Atlanta and beyond, we invite you to struggle with us. Local high school students dream of attending Emory, and many teachers encourage them to study hard and take up extracurriculars to increase their chance acceptance, knowing their chance of admission is slim. To local high school students and teachers, we invite you to struggle with us. Just down the street from Emory Hospital Midtown is the site of the former Peachtree Pine homeless shelter. In a bid to gentrify the city and evict its houseless population, the city closed the shelter and did not replace it, displacing hundreds and cutting off a last line of support for thousands of poor people in the city. Emory University purchased this building, just one example of Emory's contribution to gentrification in Atlanta. To those without homes or those displaced by gentrification, we invite you to struggle with us. Emory's $11 billion endowment, the 11th highest in the country, is an outsized influence in Atlanta's economy. While economic inequality widens in the city, Emory remains a bastion of the rich. To the restaurant workers, house cleaners, gig workers, and all proletarians, we invite you to struggle with us. In 2020, Emory University laid off or furloughed over 1,500 employees. To those who are no longer affiliated with the university, we invite you to struggle with us. 4 out of 5 students at Emory are not from Georgia. While the Freedom Riders were heading down to Georgia in the 1960s to fight for black people's right to vote, segregationist governors cast them as outside agitators. To those from outside Atlanta and Georgia, we invite you to struggle with us. 1 in 5 students at Emory are from outside of the United States. The Palestinian students murdered by American weapons under Biden will never be one of these students. To those from outside of the country, we invite you to struggle with us. In April 2023, Emory admin called the police to break up a protest led by students against Cop City on the Quad. None of the pigs were Emory students. To all those who struggle against police brutality, we invite you to struggle with us. Emory is everywhere. The place for division is nowhere. We invite you to struggle with us. God damn, doesn't that, as fucked up as things are, doesn't that fill you with a little bit of hope? Just a little smidge, a little optimism? You know, keeping the focus on Gaza and, you know, the contribution that these colleges make, but also linking that to other class struggles, you know? and fully disregarding this entire narrative about outside agitators. And in fact saying we invite people to be part of this struggle. Class consciousness spreading. Contradictions heightening. They run the same rhetoric playbook every time. I wish we could use that protocol against them like Hans did in Die Hard. Well, I mean, that's what's kind of happening, Weenus, because as much as they lean on this, it's having the opposite effect intended. And Carrier Wave, I can't read that statement because the person sharing it is one of my haters, unfortunately. So it's not going to happen. I think I might have it saved though. Unfortunately, one of the haters and losers. Anyway, I got to get going soon. I got to go pick up my kid from school in a couple minutes. But this has been a fantastic discussion today. I hope people enjoyed hanging out today. As I said, I mean, it doesn't mean that anything's going to be easy or whatever. I don't think that. There is something really historic that's going on right now. It really feels like the wheels of history have turned a whole lot over the last couple of years, haven't they? Every time it feels like the wheels of history have stopped turning, it's like, oh no, there go those wheels of history again. Weeks when decades happen, etc. The sit-ins at American universities with the aim of stopping genocide crimes in Gaza herald an awakening in global consciousness. The American authorities' resort to suppressing students will be the spark that will ignite the fuse of a global revolution against Zionist hegemony. We salute the free American students and we assure them that victory on the awareness front is more important than victory on the military front, because this is the only way to avoid war. We condemn the U.S. authorities' suppression of peaceful. Interesting. And it's like, you kind of see the logic as well. Sometimes you remember when we start getting this urge, like, why isn't Iran doing more? Why isn't Hezbollah doing more? Like, why aren't any of these groups doing more? But it's like, you see the calculation that they're just kind of hanging back and they know that like they don't need to. They're allowing Israel and the West to just fucking destroy ourselves. And like that's what's happening. You kind of see the logic of it. Anyway, it's interesting times, a lot of interesting times that we've covered on this show. But there's something happening right now. There's really something happening. And definitely for as long as I've been talking about Israel and paying attention to it, it's unprecedented. Never interrupt when your opponent is making a mistake. I think that's like really an interesting way to take a look at that. Anyway, I always felt a little bit ridiculous being in fucking Montreal, Quebec, and being like, why isn't Hezbollah doing more? Complaining about that, like, but it's not actually you that's going to be Anyway, this was a really great discussion today, folks. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks again for tuning into the show and for supporting this program. Really do appreciate it a whole lot. As a communist, I think we should be following the lead of the biggest communist parties around the world. Yeah. I think we should start lecturing those people. What about that? I think we should start lecturing those people and telling them how they're doing it wrong. That's what I think we should be doing. Why aren't we doing that? That's how I operate. Who knows more about socialism? The biggest communist parties around the world or me? A guy who has never accomplished anything. Human rights violation struggle sesh. That's right. Anyway, folks, I'm 5 subs away from the goal today. Only 5 little subs to get to the goal. And as I've said before, and you know what? I know that those 5 subs are going to come in. No, I just know that they're going to. I have 100% confidence that those final 5 subs are going to come through. I've never been more certain of anything in my entire life.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Shares.
Geek TV, thanks for the Prime. Although, unfortunately, I really appreciate the Prime and the stream, baby. Unfortunately, though, I am going to have to say that this MF did say shares. but Chic TV, thank you very much. And now a measly 4 subs to go to get to the goal. Do you believe in life after sub? Here, and before I go, I'm going to show you a drawing that my son did. I think he wanted me to show this today. So he just got this like a new tablet. Got him a new tablet. Because there's some kind of big thing to get used to, so it's a little bit to that, but it's to draw. You know, it's like one of those Galaxy tabs that has like the pen and everything, because he really loves to draw and do art. And I was showing him this morning how to do like layers. So you can take a picture and put it on the top layer and then kind of like trace it and do that. So he did this picture here. I'll show it to you right now. Of Spaceman Spiff. He really loves Spaceman Spiff. He's talking about Spaceman Spiff all morning. He is the perfect age for a Calvin and Hobbes. Yeah, he's very much Calvin and Hobbes pilled. He's been for a while, but he goes through phases where he gets really into wanting to read it all the time. We're like Based Man Spiff. There we go. Based Man Biff. I was absolutely Calvin and Hobbes pilled at the same age as well.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this. S-Cat, thank you for the 4 months of Tier 1. Thank you. Thank you for that. One more time, I'll let folks know that if you want to buy merch, TRRS, there's a lot of really cool designs. There is a sale ongoing right now if you want to do that. So please buy merch if you can.
And only 3 subs to go, folks. I gotta get out of here in just a moment. But again, I know, I don't even have to tell you.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Matt, thank you. You gifted sub. That's very, very kind of you. And for the raid today. We just got 2. We only got 2 to go. What? What? Again, I know that those 2 are going to come. Not even going to bother saying anything about it.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Sunny Sola. Sunny Sola, thank you very, very much for the 2 gifted subs. Very, very, very kind of you. Thank you. Really appreciate everyone that supports this program and allows me to do this work. Thank you again, folks. We'll be back tomorrow, and I'm going to be talking to Hayat. It'd be really great. That's going to be at 2 p.m. Thanks again, friends. Gonna be another banger tomorrow. There's gonna be another banger tomorrow, okay? And we're gonna see where this goes. Okay. Take care, folks. I'll see you tomorrow.